you better give us a visual of Mephisto at some point in this
Oh,
show.
after all we
That's what
went
I
through in
want.
WandaVision.
Like, you don't even have to have him involved. You could totally be like, nope, this is story we're telling. It's with another, like, Coven or whoever. But if you don't give me just, like... And I've heard rumors, like, it's Sacha Baron Cohen as Mephisto. So I'm like, I just need
That's
that.
a wild
Just
rumor.
even
Oh
if
my
it was, like,
gosh.
him dressed as Borat with horns, I'll take it.
Oh my gosh. That would be hilarious. Hello and welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I am your host for tonight, and with me I have one other Infinity Bro. It is the tinfoil hat distributor and carrot distributor of the Infinity Bros universe, Mark Jones.
I'm here by my own reconnaissance. Yeah.
That's good.
That, I did hear... I don't know how deep I'm going to get into this, but on the podcast I do listen to that's based... It's called Free the Rabbits. And it's the podcast's whole term, like how I explain it to people. It's like, hey, if you want to know, like, just kind of like the base level of what some conspiracy theories are, this guy does it. He's like, I'm not here to, like, tell you it's real or not. I'm just going to explain it, and then we'll talk about it. And, like, that's...
Yeah.
It's great stuff. And I learned a new conspiracy theory the other last week. So
okay, well,
and it's called EGI. So you guys go look it up. Just look up the podcast. I don't want to explain it. I was like blown away. Had never heard about it, and it's like a current one. So
I
Free
just
the
love
Rabbits.
the things that you bring to our friend group and to the Infinity Bros universe, Mark. It's great. Like, I don't even know most of these things are conspiracy theories, and then you mention them, and I'm like, what?
I mean, I gotta say this. Back in like it was when I first moved up to when I worked at Microsoft in Fargo, and I was listening to the Free the Rabbits is like a offshoot of the Confessionals podcast, where that guy brought in people who just like told their like paranormal stories or like had conspiracy stories that he was just like, yeah, just come and talk. And one person came on and talked about like how, oh, these elite people have an island and like they do a bunch of sex trafficking, blah blah blah. And I remember telling that to the group, and everyone's like, oh, that's wild. And like Max is like, there's no way that's real. And then lo and behold, a year later, it's real. You know, blah blah blah.
story of a lifetime. That's how it goes every time. Mark brings it up years before, we forget about it, and then 2 years later or something like that, it comes up and everybody believes it. And Mark was like,
they've been talking about it. The people they call conspirators, talking about it for 2 years beforehand. It's wild. And not everything's like that. I will definitely say that. I even get shocked when I'm like, that can't be real. So
yeah,
someone's got to be a Max of those people too. So
Mark's he's the informant really of our friend group when it comes to conspiracy theories. So
I present the information and you guys do with it as you will.
True. And that's how it should be, I think. And also, you are the informant when it comes to the Infinity Bros universe, which we're going to get into when we talk about Agatha All Along later this episode. Thanks for coming on, Mark. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, be a fun time. Fun ride.
We really only have Agatha All Along and one other non-spoiler topic that we're going to talk about. But for those of you guys who have not listened to the Infinity Bros podcast before, we have a special rating system that we go by on this podcast.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an infinity step.
So if you hear us refer to something as a number rating, that is how we do things on the Infinity Bros. And we'll give a spoiler warning when we get to the Agatha All Along portion of the podcast. But first, I wanted to give a short non-spoiler review of the movie The Wild Robot, which just dropped in theaters on September 27th, a couple weeks ago here. My daughter has been pumped for this movie for over a year. Like, not even joking. She has been a fan of this book series called The Wild Robot, which I had not heard of prior to her hearing about it and reading it at school. She brought it home, fell in love with it. And then when we found out they were making a movie about it, we were like, oh, sweet. Like, this is amazing. It's her favorite, like, intellectual property of all time. So it just was perfect. So my oldest daughter has been pumped for it forever. The trailers, I tell you what, man, you talk about some good trailers. Go watch any of the Wild Robot trailers. Some of those trailers brought me to tears. And I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to movie watching and stuff like that. So it's not that hard for something to bring me to tears. But those are some dang good trailers. So go look those up on YouTube. Fantastic trailers. And most of them don't even really have that many words either, which is another kind of crazy, awesome phenomenon, I guess. And I'll talk about that in a little bit when I get to my review. But yeah, Wild Robot. It's a book series that DreamWorks turned into a movie. Probably going to come out with a couple more sequels just based on the reception to this one. The Wild Robot is a 2024 American animated science fiction adventure film based on the book series of the same name by Peter Brown, produced by DreamWorks Animation and distributed by Universal Pictures. And man, guys, I'm sure you've probably seen some clips on it on social media and stuff like that, but this film is a work of art. And most of you guys know that I'm a huge Into the Spider-Verse fan, like favorite movie of all time. I think those movies are just literal art. Like they're phenomenal. Animation is a medium that is severely underrated. And I think, especially, like at the Oscars, that conversation comes up every year of like, why aren't these animated films getting, even consideration for, best picture and all that stuff. And we do have the animated film, best animated film portion of the year, but then most of the other animated films, that's the only thing they get nominated for is like best animated picture. So a lot of controversy when it comes to animated films and where it fits in cinema, like the cinema snobs in going to the theaters that don't consider animation cinema. But that is exactly the word that I would use for this, is cinema. This is a beautiful movie. Just even if you were not a person that watched movies and animated movies for the art necessarily, I think this is one that you're going to watch and appreciate. Like Across the Spider-Verse, I had mentioned on our podcast that I think Across the Spider-Verse is probably the most visually impressive movie like ever made. I wouldn't say it's on that level, but it's probably right up there in the upper echelon of animated films as far as like the animation and the graphics and stuff like that.
My first thought is like, well, I'm sure there's great scenery, like movies that do great, but really it's like I think what puts it into a different category and like I said, echelon, is even both Spider-Verse or Spider-Man or Into the Spider-Verse movies. It's like that world had to be created. So there's so much more art that goes into it. And then to make it all work and visually stunning, I think is even a higher like creative mind. Or like, and granted, there's a lot of people that are involved creating it. So it's like even all that aspect makes it more impressive.
And that's the thing about animation is like really the only limits you have is your imagination. Like you can nowadays anyways, you can make pretty much anything. Like as long as you can think it up and figure out a way to implement those like imaginative ideas, like you can pretty much do anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
And you're quite limited when it comes to making a live action film because you have to work within the cast and crews constraints. You have to actually film the movie and work within those constraints. Like you're pretty limited in what you can do in a live action film, but the animation, you can pretty much do whatever you want these days. So yeah, those Spider-Verse films, just works of art. And I'd say this Wild Robot falls right along with that. And if you need to have a good story with your movie, which I'd say most people probably generally like, and they're just not there for the spectacle of it all. The Wild Robot has that too. It's a great story about a robot that gets lost and kind of uses the whole film to decide like what its place in the world is. And it kind of comes off as like almost a coming of age film, not only for the robot but for some of the animals that the robot interacts with. And man, it's a great story. Has a great voice cast as well. Lupita Nyong'o is the Roz the robot. Pedro Pascal, Kit Connor, Bill Nighy, Stephanie Sue, Mark Hamill, Catherine O'Hara, Matt Berry, Ving Rhames. Like, a lot of great voice actors in this film. So I mean, across the board, great film. I just think this one is one that people were not expecting to come out and just be like an incredible movie, but I think it did that. I was expecting it because Svea's been talking about it for the last year. And so I was like, yeah, I think this potentially has the potential to be a pretty solid movie. But and actually, that's another thing I did not look up. The theatrical release already in whatever it's been 2 weeks or something like that, it's already grossed 100 million. I don't know if that's domestic or if that's global, but like it had a budget of 78 million, which for an animated film is pretty on par. I feel like nowadays I would even say those budgets are probably conflated, but like it's already made back its production budget, and it's only 2 weeks into it. So I think it's doing very well in the box office run, which I don't know if they really expected it to do this well.
I also wonder, I'd be curious because my movie theater in the town I live in usually doesn't have new movies until like they've been out for 2 weeks or
Hmm.
even 4 weeks or even 6 weeks. This one was out the first week it was out. So I wonder if like,
Really interesting.
this is where I wonder if these production companies that put out these movies like give like a deal to cinemas.
Right.
So like then if they give that deal, they're in more cinemas worldwide or
Right. Or
nationwide. So
yeah, I wonder how that works, because like you would think that if that's the case, if it's in, that kind of theater on day one, that
mhm.
the theater has to know that this is gonna be kind of a big deal, right? Like, and
Well, not
for the
necessarily
wild.
because none of the Marvel movies are out day one, and in this. I know
Hmm,
this because of most or all the Marvel movies t- take like the biggest cut from theaters. So like a small
interesting.
theater like
Yeah, that's
mine's not going
true.
to want
Right.
it because it's going to be too. It's going to
Right.
break into their revenue. So
Yeah, so that factors into their
mhm.
decision to show that immediately as well. So I want to get your thoughts on this, Mark. Like, what had you heard about the Wild Robot before the opening at all?
Didn't know it was a movie until I saw it on the marquee at the theater in the town I live in.
There you go. So,
Knew
and I
nothing. I
would
didn't even
say,
know it was a
like,
book. So I'm like, if there's no
yeah,
talk or
there you go.
not a lot of talking, like you said,
No,
right?
I like,
Even with a big
despite,
voice cast, like it wasn't like all like
right?
constant, but it wasn't like Wally, obviously. But it was
No, it wasn't right.
so
It wasn't like, and it being DreamWorks too, I think it's maybe slightly less like anticipated, as if it were like a Disney or Pixar,
sure,
production. But still, I mean, DreamWorks puts out bangers. We know this, but
but won't be in
I
a Nissan commercial. I won't see it. Yeah,
it's possible it might not be.
yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it was not promoted super well. Like the only promotion I really saw for it was the trailers when they came out. So yeah, interesting that it is doing so well despite maybe those factors against it. But again, this is a 100% like family friendly film. There are some very sad parts in it, dealing with like, grief, loneliness, loss, but overall, like, I mean, very, very family friendly. Like, we took our kids twice, and the second time we took our 2-year old, or 1.5 year old. So,
Hmm.
and she did okay. That was probably the first movie that we've taken to her since she was like a baby, and only had to leave the theater once. So did all right.
Hmm.
definitely a great kids movie. Again, some of those voice casts members are great and do a great job of, appealing to that younger generation. It's funny, charming, great animation. Overall, this is a great film. And like I said, it's going to be top 3 for me this year in 2024, I think. So we'll see how it all plays out. We still got a couple
Madam
movies
Web's
to
on it.
see.
Is
Yeah,
2 or 1 or
Madam
something.
Web is up there. Craven is still coming out. Venom 3. We got a lot of
Gotta watch Joker. That might be
Joker. Oh my gosh, I've heard
that should
so
have been a
many
topic
bad
for
things
today.
about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it right after this.
All right, let's do it.
So anyways, I would give The Wild Robot a 6 out of 6. It's fantastic. Go see it. Definitely worth spending the big bucks that the theaters are requiring now to go see it. So in my opinion, very worth it. All right, let's talk about Joker 2. Really terrible reviews coming out about
it. Might be the first, like I told this to the group chat guys, the Infinity Bros. This might be the first movie I don't see based off of the reviews I accidentally stumbled upon, and then had to look at more reviews to see if it was real or just someone like fake posting reviews to make people not go. And I was baffled to see it was pretty much the same story being, or pretty much the same scene and talked about. And then reading other stuff. Because like, well, I already got the spoiler. I better read it all. Just get out of the way. I'm like, yep, I don't think I will waste my time watching this movie. It just sounds worse. And then what I sent and this is beforehand, before I read read reviews, the like rating score the audience score was higher for Madam Web than Joker 2. So
that is wild.
how about that?
Okay, so
That's
a little bit of context here. So you are not normally a review guy. Is that correct? Like
correct.
You don't like watch reviews or listen to reviews to determine if you're going to see the movie.
Correct. I don't usually ever read reviews. And that's why I had to say I stumbled upon one when I was on Reddit. And then I was like, all right, I got to go to the real world and check out, Rotten Tomatoes and other sites. And yeah, it was pretty much the same stuff I was seeing. So
yeah.
Wild.
So usually on these controversial films, there's like a pretty wide discrepancy on Rotten Tomatoes. Like usually the audience score is really high and the critic score is low, or vice versa. Like the critic score is low and the audience score is high because people still liked it, even though the critics thought it was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
This is rating real low on both accounts at this point.
And then it's a stinker.
33% on for the critic score and 30% for the audience score.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's pretty bad, even as far as like misunderstood masterpieces go, like.
Well, and that's the thing too, where I don't care. I'm not really spoiling anything, but a lot of the reviews I end up reading kind of went the same line, where it's like the director really was like, hey, I want to tell this story, but like to like get it paid for, I want to use known characters in a superhero universe, but really not pay any homage or tribute to the actual characters themselves. I'm going to tell my own stories that happen to be the same names as these characters.
Right. So. And that was I feel like our worry coming into it with Harley Quinn, because early reviews and like testing or whatever they do were kind of saying that was, and no, I think Todd Phillips even said, he was like, Harley Quinn's not really like super like she is in the comics and like other media. Like she's kind of her own version of Harley Quinn. And it's like that was a red flag for me. I'm like, this movie, number one, did not need to be made, because Joker is a good movie on its own. And it's a depressing movie that I don't want to ever watch again. So like, why do we need a sequel for that? I don't know. Number two, it's a musical for some godforsaken reason. Like, and I like musicals. I'm a musical guy. But like, how do you turn Joker, a super depressing, like mental health film, into a musical, which like 90% of musicals are like happy movies? How? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then three, all of those things that people were saying beforehand, like, oh, this is a different type of movie. It's not anything like you're expecting. It's like that all was red flags for me. I was just like, I just don't see myself liking this one. So it's one I'm definitely skipping. And I'll probably give it a watch when it's on streaming at some point. But now that everybody has been trashing it, my expectations are pretty low.
Yeah. And I'm actually grateful. So there was a untitled Hulk Hogan biopic that was going to be made, and Todd Phillips is supposed to be directing that. So I'm kind of happy that got shelved, and he's no longer tied to it. So I'm all
and it's kind of depressing, disappointing, because like Joker was great. Like Todd Phillips did set out and do what he set out to accomplish with that movie, I feel like. And then he turns around and does this. Like I don't get it. I can't comprehend what in his mind made this an okay thing to do.
well, and not only that, like execs and other people were like, yeah, this is just remember, everyone's got to remember this movie's out, but Batgirl will never see the light of day. Just remember that, everybody.
Yeah, right.
Clip it right there. That's our viral TikTok or whatever.
This is the movie WB wanted people to see, apparently.
Yep, not Batgirl.
Not Batgirl with Brendan Fraser in it. No, not that one.
No.
Wild. So yeah, it looks bad. People are saying it's bad. I have seen like maybe one or two okay reviews on Twitter that said it was like fine and it's all right, and like Lady Gaga is good as and that's part of me is like I want to see it because Lady Gaga is amazing, and you know I want her to blow my socks off like we say on this podcast all the time. But the other part of it is if she's not playing the character that they casted her to play, what are we doing here? Like if she's just playing an original character
who happens to be Harley Quinn, or named Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
And set in a world where Harley Quinn would exist. Yeah, then that's how you pull people who are fans of the lore out and are like, okay, this was like, just name it something else. Don't ride the coattails of this franchise.
Like, fine, you could leave everything exactly the same, just name her something else. Like, she doesn't have to be Harley Quinn. Like, especially if you're disregarding all lore that has ever come before you. Like, what's the point?
Exactly.
Silly. But anyways, it is doesn't seem like it's doing well. I don't know anybody who has gone to see this in theaters. So
won't be me.
Won't be me either. Anyways, Joker 2 sounds like it sucks. All right, now on to the main meat of the podcast, something that hopefully doesn't suck and that we kind of like a little bit at least. Agatha All Along. Agatha All Along finally dropped. We've been waiting for this one for a while. WandaVision was like, what, 2021?
Yes, it was like still in lockdown, and we got to really binge this, or really consume it and savor it.
So Wednesday, September 18th, 2024, 3 years after WandaVision drops. I feel like we even got at least rumors that Agatha was getting her own show that same year that WandaVision came out.
Gosh.
Probably later in the year, but like it's been a long time coming. And it kind of did sneak up on us, I feel like, because I remember hearing about them setting it for a fall date earlier this year, and then I just kind of forgot about it.
So looking on Wikipedia, it says in May of 21, Jack Schaefer signed a 3-year contract with Marvel Studios. So I wonder if that was to do more series, or they just do like, hey, you come and pitch us stuff and we'll give you stuff. So this was his baby. Okay. But yeah, it was gosh, so on here it says November 21. Something was revealed for this. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then we went through all of those name changes, and then they revealed earlier this year that it was Agatha All Along. And that is the final, which actually that was pretty clever how they went through all of that and then settled on Agatha All Along. I was a big fan of the Agatha Harkness in WandaVision. Catherine Hahn is fantastic. Love her. I don't know. Like, it feels like a show that wasn't really needed, but I'm not going to say no to a Catherine Hahn, Agatha Harkness show. Like, I'm not gonna. So, here we are, 4 episodes in. It's a 9-episode show, so we have over half of the series still left. but Mark and I are going to talk about it a little bit. We'll give a spoiler warning in just a bit. But Mark, I want to get your thoughts through the first 4 episodes, non-spoiler first. Give us 60-second thoughts in general on the
My
show so
elevator
far.
pitch.
Elevator pitch, yeah.
Gosh. So if you go into the show, 0 expectations, but still knowing the lore, or like really all you need to know is, or just some of the MCU lore, and then for sure having watched WandaVision to kind of make it make sense. But yeah, we get the story that's going to follow a little spooky, scary witches coven in the MCU and their journey to get Agatha's powers back, and all the, we want to say, shenanigans or crazy things they'll get into is on their road to on the road to get her
The
powers
Witch's
back.
Road, yeah.
The Witch's Road. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So far, the show has been way above expectations. So, and I'm still all for it. And there was a scene in this episode 4 that was, I looked at Carrie and was like, wow, this is like, that thing is pretty frightening for being a Marvel show. So if this is what's to come, I'm all in.
I'm right with you, and my expectations for the show were relatively low. I wouldn't say they were like rock bottom or anything like that, but I just again was like, why is the show needed? Like, I liked WandaVision, but it wasn't my favorite Marvel show. But again, it's Catherine Hahn. She's casted great. The rest of the cast in this show is also great, by the way, through these 4 episodes. I was a big SNL fan in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and Shashir Zameda is great. Love her in her role as Jen. And yeah, and we just have a bunch of great. Aubrey Plaza has been great. As Rio is her character's name so far. I'm digging it, honestly. It's different. It's not your typical Marvel superhero show, and I think that's a good thing because the Marvel typical superhero shows have been going not so great in the last few years. So they need to shake things up and be different, and that's what this show is. It's a great spooky season show, honestly. I've watched these first 4 episodes. I'm getting geared up and excited for Halloween and watching more spooky season stuff. So definitely would check it out if you are into spooky season and maybe sick of the Marvel stuff. It's different. So I think you might like it.
And we did a podcast a few times ago where Marvel villains we'd want to see, and a lot of mine were horror based because it's I think there's just potential for spooky, scary, legit scary, frightening Marvel stories to be told out there. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, so here is your official spoiler warning for the first 4 episodes of Agatha All Along.
This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros
Prepare yourself.
spoiler warning.
So, Mark, we have Agatha leading our witches coven through the trials of the Witch's Road. They've been through 2 trials through these 4 episodes. The first 2 episodes were kind of her gearing up and gathering the coven. Just kind of a ragtag bunch of random witches that were in her area, pretty much.
yeah.
And I love those first 2 episodes of her gathering everybody up, along with what's his face? They're calling him Teen in the show, but Joe Locke is the actor.
Who would they initially think he was? He was like a version of Wiccan, but not Wanda's
right.
Wiccan.
That's kind of a lot of the speculation going around is that he's one of Wanda's kids. I mean, I don't think it's impossible that that's still on the table. But
there's a version of Wiccan that it's not Wanda's kid, so that's the other thing where
that's right,
it could be possible.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. He gets this sigil placed on him. He's not able to. Well, he probably says his name, but the witches can't hear it. So there's a screenshot that's floating around the internet that they screenshot right when the sigil is going across his mouth, and it looks like an M. So Mephisto may have placed the sigil, or another witch or something like that with the name M. That's been a theory that's flying around. Who do you think this kid is so far, besides what we've already mentioned, that he's possibly a kid of Wanda's, like, or a different multiverse.
Well, and there's
version
also
of
they
them.
fed us in the I think by episode 3, but we get a little bit beforehand. But the other red herring or possibility would be he's Agatha's kid.
Mhm.
Even though at the end of
Yeah.
episode 4, Aubrey Plaza's character basically tells her at the end before the credits happen that he's not your kid. So I don't know. Could be that.
Yeah, okay,
Could be
so-
Mephisto. Could be
Right.
Wiccan, maybe from a different universe, or it could just be some random teen that got is being controlled by someone else. So
That's still on the table. I feel like with how they're building him up, that he is somebody important, at least in the future of the MCU. Maybe not like, that has been important or anything like that.
Well, it would make sense if they're going to do Young Avengers if they,
True.
make him have
Yeah.
some powers,
Right.
which powers
some kind of like, witch powers or something like that. Yeah, that would make sense. But yeah, I think, okay, so let's fast forward to episode 4, because you already talked about that a little bit. So we get this episode where they have to basically break what's her name, Alice's like generational curse for one of the trials. And like you said, like the like demon or whatever the thing is shows up in the episode, and he's pretty creepy looking. Actually,
he was scary.
Yeah.
Whatever the generational curse demon thing was frightening. I was like, Kelly, this is what you would see in like a legit like paranormal occult movie. Like it was that level, in my opinion. Where it was like, if this is what's coming for this type of, when they do this type of genre, I'm all in. So, and
you're no slouch to like the horror genre. Like you've watched plenty of horror, so I feel like that coming from you is a pretty good endorsement of that.
And it looked like practical too. So like it looked like that was like a real
it looked
suit
good.
or costume that they made for someone to wear, because it was frightening.
Really cool visuals so far. Everything in the show has looked good. Like I've no qualms with how the show has looked. I love how they enter the trial like houses or whatever, and they're in like different eras, and they like get in like different garb or whatever when they close the door and stuff. Like love that. And this last one is like them in 70s stuff, so they're in like disco and like workout outfits and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fantastic. Aubrey Plaza, so her character's name is Rio Vidal. We still don't know a whole lot about her character. There are definitely a lot of spoilers online for who this character is, but she gave us a few hints in episode 4. She talked a lot about like specifically that campfire scene at the end. She, I mean, it's very, you can definitely see where she's coming from when she's talking. Like she's almost looking right at Agatha every time she's saying something. Like she's obviously talking about Agatha when she's talking about the person that she lost because she had to do something. So it's leading up to Aubrey Plaza and Rio and Agatha were in some kind of relationship in the past. Her character is a very powerful character that I'll mention a little bit later, and I'll give another separate spoiler warning if you guys really don't want to hear who this is. But like I already got spoiled because it's been floating around online, and unfortunately a lot of people are not careful about that kind of thing. Spoilers are just bountiful.
I'm unaware of.
Okay, well maybe I'll have you plug your ears if you don't want to hear, or if you do want to hear. I don't know. We'll see. Aubrey Plaza is fantastic. Loved her in this episode and the first episode when she was hunting down Agatha in the first place. I'm really excited to see where the rest of the show goes with her and Catherine Hahn. But yeah, like you said, she does specifically tell Agatha Harkness that this is not her kid, which is another interesting development, because we know from all of the... I shouldn't even say we know. We don't really know a whole lot about what happened, but all of the other witches in her coven have been speculating about the rumors about her that she gave up her kid for the Darkhold.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was in episode 3.
Yeah, episode 3 we kind of where everyone's like seeing the thing that they...
Yeah, they're like hallucinating,
yeah,
and she sees... the vision of like a baby that gets replaced with the Darkhold. So like that seems pretty clear that something went down. Obviously, we don't know what that is quite yet. But yeah, she obviously has some regrets of something that happened with her son in the past. So we're going to learn more about that. But Aubrey Plaza's character tells her that this teen is not her son. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, Mark, what do you think of Rio, Aubrey Plaza's character, and what part do you think she is playing in the future of this show?
Like, as in,
with all of the kind of vague references that she made in that last episode, where do you think the story is going, revolving around her?
Like, I feel, well, I just want to say this. I think Aubrey Plaza's death, that'd be my first thing, where it says the part where like when they're in the house and they're in the music studio room, and she puts on the speaker for everyone to hear them talk between Agatha and Rio, and she says, well, like, you would kill them and then I come take the bodies or their soul or something like that, where it's just like, really strong. If they're really pointing us in that direction, she's death. So my guess, or Agatha, and if them working together, I'm sure there's going to be either them having to fight each other, which they might still happen, but then later on have to team up again to fight something far worse. But
so, okay, here is the spoiler warning for all of you listening who might not want to know exactly who Aubrey Plaza's character is. Skip ahead like a minute, because I'm just going to talk for a little bit about this. So, Mark, Funko revealed a Funko Pop, or actually, I don't know if it was a reveal. It was a leak from Funko that they had a pop of Aubrey Plaza's character, and it is indeed Death that you were talking about. So kudos to you on calling that. But I mean, it is like you said, there's some pretty cryptic stuff that she says,
and
in that
also
last
like
episode
she
that
could
kind of
be,
leads you to that.
She also could be a version of Enchantress.
True,
Enchantress. Like,
right?
that's something. If she's a Green Witch, and she's the Green Witch, could either. That's another thing too, where because also like when she uses the demonic voice to say she's the Green Witch, is the other part of me that's like, well, maybe she isn't Death, because Death wouldn't need to be a witch,
right?
But she does. But it's like,
that's true. Like, she wouldn't necessarily have to consider herself a witch, because Death is like a cosmic being. Like,
correct.
So that's the thing that I was going to mention, though. Like, her being Death is really interesting to me, because like you said, Death is not really a witch. Like, she's a more of a concept almost than anything. Like, and Death is an actual character in the comics that Thanos is in love with. So that's the really interesting part, is that like that in the comics, like Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity Wars, that whole like comic line is because Thanos wanted to impress Death. That's why he did it, not because he wanted to like balance like the MCU storylines, that he wanted to like balance the universe or whatever. In the comics, he did it because he wanted to impress Death, because he loved her. So like she's a real character, and I just find it fascinating that she's being introduced potentially to the MCU in this way. And I think she's got a lot up her sleeve that she can do that we're going to learn about.
And that's what will be interesting to be revealed. Like, what was like, if she is Death and it's not just some leaked red herrings out there, and it's true, because like no one's actually seen the physical Funko Pop, have they?
No, it was like a leaked like promo card that they
so very much it could be Disney doing it themselves, so it keeps everyone surprised.
That's true.
Because my question would be like, what was Agatha doing with Death to be on a team?
Yeah,
like I want to know that.
Yep.
And who was making them be on a team that make them do stuff?
Right. And what was their history? Because she mentions like, hey, like in that kind of like monologue that she gives at the campfire, I had to do something to somebody who I loved. And, like I don't remember exactly what she says. I couldn't take it back or something like that. But like, so she obviously was the one that took Agatha's son. It'll be interesting to see if like Agatha was straight up doing it for the Darkhold, or like it was part of another deal that like,
well, see, this is what would
something
be
like that.
What would be wild and I don't foresee this being a storyline, is let's hypothetically Aubrey Plaza is death. And then also hypothetically she took Agatha's child's soul or life because she's death in exchange for the Darkhold that she got from Mephisto, and she's wanted to finish the road to get her powers back to then go into hell and find her son's soul back. And maybe that's what we'll find out with the teen. Maybe the vessel doesn't have a soul, and she puts her son's soul into the teen, which will become Wiccan or something like that.
Interesting. Okay. That is
Just
interesting.
going deep.
Yeah.
I'm in the weeds. I might be drowning.
That's what we're here for. That's what Mark is here for, to go into the
But that
weeds
would be
here.
a wild story and like how they're doing it totally could work. So
yeah, my thought was initially like, so Agatha through these 4 episodes, like you can obviously tell she's like a pretty arrogant witch, and like she like her powers previously to tangling with Scarlet Witch and getting her powers taken away.
And Agatha gets her powers from people using powers on her.
Yeah,
so
that's what I was just gonna say. Like when they like use spells on her, she can take their powers.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like gaining power probably for a long time because she's been around since like the Salem witch trials, like gaining powers from other witch. And I don't really know exactly how that works. Like if the other witch loses their power,
well,
or
that's what we saw with like when we did the flashback in WandaVision, where she basically like sucked out the essence of all the witches that were using their powers on her, and she was also doing the same thing to Wanda. So, and then I think what we got in that flashback in WandaVision, it's like clearly she made a pact with someone. Probably, that's why going back having flashbacks of saying it's Mephisto, because who else would she make a pact with? Unless we're going to find out the pact was with death. So like when she would take people's essence and like then they would die because it was easy pickings for death. So,
and in I believe it was episode 3, we got an actual Mephisto reference, not just like all these little like clues and everything. Like so they actually said the character Mephisto, and it was just a reference. Like it wasn't like them really talking about anything important
or seeing Mephisto. Still, it was just like talking and passing. Like we both know who this guy is.
Yeah, so still he exists in the MCU, which is some pretty interesting confirmation. And do you think that Mephisto is going to make an appearance in the show by the end of it?
I feel like, I don't know if we talked about this in the podcast or I've talked with you guys a bunch. I had very little expectation for the show, and so far it's been going above and beyond those. I have like 0 complaints about the show, but you better give us a visual of Mephisto at some point in the show.
After that's all we went through in WandaVision.
Like you don't even have to have him involved. You could totally be like, nope, this is storytelling. It's with death and another like coven or whoever. But if you don't give me just like, and I've heard rumors like it's Sacha Baron Cohen as Mephisto, so I'm like, I just need that. Even if it was like him dressed as Borat with horns, I'll take it.
Oh my gosh, that would be hilarious. I would love that.
I am Mephisto, my wife.
My wife. Oh my gosh, I would not know what to do with that information. I would just like sit there at the end of that episode and just let the credits roll for 20 minutes.
He is involved. You got to think Mephisto is involved somehow.
Right.
Like if you're going to do the Witch's Road and all these, occult like sigils and, chants you're giving me, and like their magic is supposed to come from even in the Marvel universe from demonic forces. So like whether you not use Mephisto or I'm blanking on one of the other characters I mentioned where it's like he was kind of like the king of chaos magic. It's like if it's not that guy, it's still kind of the same.
Was it Cthon?
Yeah, there you go. So it's like it's still coming from the same essence. So
yeah, right.
Which would make sense if the Scarlet Witch died on Earth, that he would return because that's his lore. So
true, that's true. Yeah, kind of a vacuum in the if she actually died or whatever.
With Marvel already giving us all like the other religions kind of lore being real, what's one step just having the Christian religion be real?
True.
So
yeah, there you go.
Or I guess we could be whatever. There's 3 different big face out there that have the same. Well, some people won't say the same, but like canonically in their books are the same God and the devil. So
Yeah, sure.
Some
It's
people.
there's a lot
Anyway,
of
moving on from that. Don't want to dig my
a
hole.
lot of like historical
Unclip it.
lore in unclip it. We're just talking about a lot of historical lore between like whatever you want to consider God, higher power, and like Satan or whatever earthly power or whatever. Like there's a lot of lore that goes with that, and I think it is actually pretty cool that Marvel incorporates those types of characters into their universe, even if they're not the traditional like
Mhm.
Christian necessarily god or whatever. Like obviously we have all of, like the Greek gods and the Norse gods are all like real things in the Marvel universe and stuff like that. But like, yeah, to have Mephisto, who is clearly a version of the devil, and I think actually in the comics, Satan himself is actually a thing, because wasn't Russell Crowe going to play Satan
Well, that
in
was the
Thor:
rumor
Love
that.
and
Well,
Thunder
I don't know if
before they
it was going to be
cast him
Russell
as Zeus?
Crowe, but there was, I guess, the rumor were. I don't remember if it was confirmed that it wasn't going to be Zeus in Thor: Love and Thunder. It was going to be the devil, but they probably would have named him Mephisto to just cover their
Probably,
bases.
yeah. But like, Mephisto is obviously like a reference to the devil or whatever people would consider the devil in the Marvel universe. So I think it's kind of cool that they bring those entities in, and Death too. I mean, Death is like a character, and like I said before, is almost more of a concept when you like look at the broader scope of it, because like in the comics, it's like she's clearly connected to like obviously when people die and stuff like that. So whereas in real life, Death may not be a person necessarily. It's kind of cool that they combine that into a character concept in the comics. So I don't know, I kind of like it actually. All right. Next thing up here, Mark. So you mentioned in episode 4 we get that like demon thing. I think the visuals in this series are very solid, and they are, like I mentioned before, contributing to the spooky feeling of this show immensely, because in episode 2, I mean, this is not a typical Marvel show that I'm going to watch with my kid. Like episode 2, I believe it was episode 2, at the end of the episode, Mrs. Hart, Deborah Rupp's character, dies, and they show her dead body pretty clearly, and then like close her eyes at the
Right.
end of the episode. Like it's not it's not like other Marvel movies where if somebody dies and they're just like showing them like off screen or whatever, and saying they died and crying about it. Like that's a pretty creepy visual of her dying and then closing her eyes. Episode 3, we get Death, or I shouldn't call her Death before we've confirmed that she's actually Death, but Rio Vidal like comes up out of the ground when they like summon her. Or maybe that's episode 4. Is it the beginning of episode 4? I don't remember when it is, but like she comes out of the ground like a zombie and is like doing all these weird like body contortions, like body horror type stuff. A little creepy. And then episode 4, we get the demon thing that's like seriously creepy looking. Like there's some creepy factor to the show that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a Marvel production, I feel like. And I think that's a good thing. Like I said before, I think
it's a breath of fresh air,
right,
in the Marvel universe.
and the fact that they can kind of start going into some of these different avenues like horror, and well, I probably wouldn't consider this show like straight up horror. Like they're dipping their toes into it. And we got stuff like Werewolf by Night, where it's like clearly a monster horror movie or like genre or whatever. Like I love that they're able to expand into these different genres a little bit.
So I gotta come back. I think another thing I feel like just kind of gets forgotten after episode like 2 is the Salem 7. Like that being brought up.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about those guys. You're totally right.
Because when I looked up the Salem 7 in fan lore, or not fan lore, but like the Marvel lore, they're supposed to be like grandchildren of Agatha and another warlock.
Really?
And then also the other thing that I like, that like light bulb in my head when Max and I talked about on the podcast about Fantastic Four movie and how maybe Agatha brings us to Fantastic Four, and the Fantastic Four is stuck in the 60s or of this time
Interesting.
frame because they're under
Yeah.
like some spell is, and what I learned with the Salem 7 is, and they were used as foes to the Fantastic Four. So like their foes are Scarlet
Wow.
Witch and the Fantastic Four. So I think that'd be wild if, like, that's what, if anything, I don't think the show ties to Brave New World, but I wouldn't be surprised if this show like kind of slingshots us to Fantastic Four.
It's seems like it would be totally random, but I'd be into it because I feel like with the lack of connectivity that we've been getting between all the Marvel projects since Endgame,
They gotta start doing it. Like, that's where we're at.
I want it, man. Yeah, I want those post-credit scenes that have other characters in them. Like I don't even care that they're like cheesy and totally leading you into the next. I want it. I want it back. So yeah, that's crazy though that the Salem 7 is like a Fantastic Four, because we talked about this on one of our previous episodes that like Agatha Harkness has Fantastic Four connections, like as the nanny of, I think it's Franklin and Valeria Reed. Like that is wild that the Salem 7 has a connection with them as well. And that was a creepy part as well. That was another thing that was like straight out of a legit real horror movie, where she like comes up in town and her neighbor is standing there with his like groceries or whatever, and he's like, what the heck? And then when they split into the 7, he just drops his groceries and runs. Just so great. But yeah, it was legitimately creepy, and the teen was like freaking out as they were approaching the house, like, oh, okay, let's just go on the road. Great plot, driving them onto the road. Man, that was good. It was really good.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
I'm expecting they show up again at some point. Like they got to show up again.
Yeah, I would assume
whether or not, and then also get revealed if they actually have any relation to Agatha. If like the Marvel, fictional biography is that they're all grandchildren of Agatha. So
yeah. Well, and in the first episode, Rio says to her, like, I'll leave you alone, but they're going to come for you. And obviously referring to the Salem 7. So like, they're not going to like stop looking for her, even though she's on the Witch's Road. So like when she gets back, they're probably going to be there, like, and she'll probably have to duke it out with them, like right when she gets back from the Witch's Road. So I had a good chance we see them again, I think.
Because with 5 episodes left still of the series, I think, and I've told my, because I've watched every episode with my BF5 Kelly, my belief is they get out of the Witch's Road before the season finale. I don't think, like, that's, I might be wrong, but I just have a feeling like they get out like 2 episodes before this, like in episode 7, they're out, and then they're dealing with what the aftermath of finishing the road.
Aftermath. So do you think they all survive to the end? Because obviously...
I honestly feel like
survived, but she wasn't a real witch, so like that's doesn't count. Maybe.
And I think that's where, like they kind of, I feel like not really exactly touch on that, but that's what I kind of grasp is like she wasn't gonna probably make it unless they were her team, or she might come back. I wouldn't be surprised if Miss Hart comes back and like we find out maybe she's Mephisto. Like that'd be wild.
That would be wild. Oh, but I would be here for it.
Yep. But I kind of get that everyone's gonna stay alive. Agatha's gonna, of course, gonna change a heart, and like I can't sacrifice these people or whatever she's doing.
Well, yeah, and we see at the end of episode 4 that they're actually like coming together as a coven and like working each other's like strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that as they do the second trial. So like, I mean, and Agatha still seems like a pretty self-centered witch throughout most of these episodes, but then at the end you kind of get a sense that she's like, she might be digging this coven thing, you know, like I don't know, we'll find out if that self-centered desire that Agatha has causes her to sacrifice one of her coven in order for her to get more power at the end of the Witch's Road. Or
that'd be wild if she did. Like I just that's why I'm leaning to like everything is making us think that she could turn on them at any second.
Right. Well,
And
here's
my
the other
thought is
thing
what we're going to
too.
get is Rio is going to try to attack them, and that's when
Mhm.
Agatha's going to step in.
Yeah. Well, now that they know her secret, though, that she can't really harm them unless they fight her, basically. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say they're impervious to her, but like they can't get their power taken away by her necessarily.
Yep.
So yeah, it's adds another interesting layer to this ragtag group of witches. So, and I'm excited to see what eras that we're going into in the next trials. So, I think they said there's 4 trials, right?
I was just going to ask that. So, if there was 4, we've gone through 2.
So we got 2 more trials. So yeah, I mean, episode 7.
Yeah,
that's
very possible.
That's 3 episodes away, so that's definitely possible.
We get through 2 trials.
They would get through.
We get out of the
Witch's Road.
The Witch's Road.
Interesting.
Because that's what we got too. Is Agatha's gone through the Witch's Road before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's also interesting. She's kept that.
So here's my thought too on that. Like they keep saying that she has, and every time they say that, she like hesitantly confirms it.
Right.
So I wonder if she actually has never done it before. So I don't know. We'll find out at the end. I'm sure. You know,
and we'll have to find out how she really got the Darkhold, whether it was giving up a child for that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of interesting postulation towards the end of
it would be really comical for someone to show up and start, casting them in the name of Jesus and see what happens to them. Someone throws some holy water and see what
priest with a big old crucifix and
reading Psalm 91, just getting the job
Russell
done.
Crowe, because that seems to be his type of thing.
Right.
Russell Crowe looking dude. Yeah, I'd like to see it. Might be a little confusing since he's already Zeus in the Marvel universe, but
right. I guess I didn't rate it though, but I would so far Agatha has been a 6 out of 6 for me. I have nothing bad to say about it. Yep.
Wow.
Writing's been good, visuals been good, acting's been good. Nothing. I feel like the last big show I reviewed and watched was The Acolyte, and that was just hot garbage.
Yeah, that was tough to watch.
And mostly from just I think bad writing and acting. But I just feel like this show has just been good. It's been fun. But
yeah, writing has been solid.
Maybe 5.9 because I guess I can't say it's the best thing I've ever watched, but
right. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 6. I still think it's really good and solid. It definitely seems like kind of a niche like Halloween thing to me. Like it's not something that I'd probably rewatch unless I was like in a real spooky season type of mood so far. Anyways, like if they blow my socks off at the end of the season, like obviously this could turn into a much higher rating, but as of right now, I think I'd give it a 5 out of 6. Really solid, higher than my expectations were for sure. So I think they've got that going for them. I'm excited about this. Yeah. I'm definitely more excited about the rest of the season than I was at the beginning of the season. So,
and keeping a mystery, I think that's what also helps. Like,
yeah,
I think we're at the speculation light version of this, kind of like we were at speculation heavy with WandaVision. So
enough time has passed that we're over the the speculation of WandaVision that ruined our podcast.
Does Wanda show back up in this show?
That
whether they're on the Witch's Road or not, because I mean,
I bet she shows up in flashbacks, honestly, because I would not be surprised if Agatha has some.
And the dead body in the morgue in season 1 was supposed to be Wanda,
yeah,
so
right.
Because I think her coming to realization that she's in a trance is the moment Wanda probably either poofs out. Like people, I know there's book lore that says she dies there, but they say the Scarlet Witch dies, so I don't know. So I'm assuming Wanda's still around. But.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential with the rest of this series, and we'll be eagerly awaiting the rest of it. So, any other things that you want to mention before we start wrapping it up here, Mark, that we haven't discussed quite yet?
Within Agatha?
Just for Agatha, yeah.
Nothing really comes to my mind that's this is clearly pointing to one direction. I still feel like it's I'm holding on to the mystery, and I can speculate for days on this.
Mhm.
I do hope, and I always say this to these shows that are about new one. I hope they bring someone that we already know into this for at least one episode, not the whole episode, but just be like, this is what ties. If they don't tie it to like a movie, at least tie it to a character, so we get why
Sure.
she would help out
Yeah.
this character later
Mhm.
on. I do think
Yeah.
Agatha's going to end as her being a good person, because obviously she's like, I don't think she's going to be a villain. But it would be interesting. Having said that, it would be interesting to go down the road where villains start teaming up, and
That
that
would
could
be
be something.
interesting.
Or
And
we get that
that's got
the new
Secret Wars
Doctor
vibes on it too,
the
like
new Doctor
villains
Doom
teaming up
swoops
and
in and
yeah.
grabs her because she has new powers.
Yeah.
That's how I think
Yeah.
you end the show, and you're like, holy crap, what are they doing?
That would be wild, dude. Oh man. I do really like the theory though that we maybe get like it's wild and way out of the box, but like a Fantastic Four post credit scene at the end of this series would be awesome. I would be
I
all
think
in on
and it
that.
would work if they did it right, and I think they have time to make it work, so I'd be all in for that.
After I mean, you mentioned too that the last like big series that we really were into was The Acolyte. After that show being built up as this big like murder mystery, like ooh, it's so mysterious, and it really just fell flat on its
Right.
face. This show has been a refreshing breath of air, like because I mean, I don't feel like they really marketed it super well, but that almost went to its benefit because they didn't
Well,
over push, like how great of a show this is going to be. And then it, did what The Acolyte did and just wasn't that great. So
mhm.
like the fact that we didn't really know much about the show and now we're really getting into it, I think is playing to its benefit for sure.
And I also wonder, I gotta look this up, what the cost per episode for one or for Agatha.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
So I know, like with the Acolyte, it was like what, like north of 50 million an episode, or was it more than that?
Yeah, it was around 200 million for the entire show, and the entire show was it 8 episodes?
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't remember that.
I think it
or
was
how
I
many
think it was 8. Yeah, I think it was 8 episodes, so it would have been a little less than like 20 million per episode, which TV wise is a buttload of money. Like nowadays with the costs of TV just going up in general. Yeah,
So
I think it was more than that actually. I feel like remember hearing that it was like over 20 million per episode.
So Acolyte reported a budget of 180 million for 6 episodes.
For 6 episodes. Oh dang.
All I can see or kind of find online for Agatha is one title is Agatha has been the least expensive live action series for Marvel, and for reference, Echo costs $40 million. So
really?
mm-hmm.
That's
I don't know if it's
well,
40
Echo
million
doesn't
per
surprise me
episode.
because that's a very grounded one. But
Yes.
Agatha, like that's gonna require quite a bit of like CGI and stuff, you would think.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But maybe a lot of that could be. Yeah, I think of it too. It's like I wonder, and I have no idea how this technology works. Like if you already have it saved on a computer, is it pretty easy to just replicate it? So
Yeah.
Versus
question.
like it costs money to like redo like new stuff.
I mean, I would assume they have references from WandaVision, but like, I mean, you're creating a new show, so like, I'm sure they have to,
at least for the CGI
not necessarily
part,
create from
especially
scratch, but like, yeah.
Well, that's where I go. Like, I kind of want to rewatch episode 4 to really see like was that generational curse more practical effects or
it looked like a
digital
mix of both, honestly. Yeah. So I don't know,
because that's where they're going to save money is being more using practical effects and
using practical effects. Yeah. Right. So lots of things to look forward to for Agatha All Along. You can check out our WandaVision episodes. I'll throw some links to those in the show notes. That's when Mark and Max basically started unraveling on the Infinity Bros podcast. When we were speculating about Mephisto every episode and just having like 2+ hour episodes on these 20-minute WandaVision episodes.
That was wild times because there was stuff, if you go watch WandaVision, that clearly points to what that character probably is and who's pulling the strings.
They were throwing so many references and red herrings out there. It was incredible.
And for it to come out later that like the writers never had heard of these characters before, like the ones that we were speculating on. I was like, there's
such
no
a big
way.
Fat lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild stuff. But anyways, definitely go check those episodes out if you're looking for kind of the speculation aspect of the Infinity Bros podcast. It's a great time. Max and Mark just go on and on and on, and it was a blast. It was a defining moment for the Infinity Bros podcast. But yeah, you can also check out the Infinity Bros at theinfinitybros.com. You can check out our socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Threads. I don't know what else are we on these days. Robbie is quite often on Drip selling some magic packs, playing Magic Online on Twitch, all that good stuff. But you can check out theinfinitybros.com for all that.
I haven't updated or done another review on a movie, but I was on that. What am I blanking on? What that movie review place was called? Can't find that.
Letterboxd.
There you go. There it is, and I just found it. So
Letterboxd. There too. Yeah, you probably still have a bunch to upload, don't you? Or do you?
I do because I printed off. I know I haven't updated in a while, but I printed off all the movies I got through Netflix DVD. So
check out the Infinity Bros on Letterboxd. It is Mark's ginormous backlog,
and the gimmick is
that he has watched.
One sentence reviews
on Letterboxd. They are a blast to go through, and you've already done like 300, haven't you? Like you've done a lot.
Yep.
Wild stuff. Anyways, you can also email the Infinity Bros at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com for any of your feedback. What do you guys think of Agatha All Along? Make sure you let us know. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you, listener, wherever you're listening, however you're listening. Thank you so much for making us a part of your podcast experience. We love you 3000. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at The Infinity Bros. You can also check out our website at theinfinitybros.com for links, reviews, and sweet merch. Feel free to send us listener feedback via social media or email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.